Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm your host, as always, David Danto, and it's in the U.S. It's Labor Day weekend. It's one of the end of summer markers, a 3-day weekend where they call it a bank holiday over in Europe, and there's a lot of things not happening. And joining me on this show is my friend Mike Brown-Cestero, who's going to be looking at where we are in the calendar and what's going on with trade shows and trade show season, and just have a little bit of chat about it. So, how are you doing, Mike? How are things going?
I'm doing great, and I appreciate that there is someone else in the world who honors Labor Day by laboring. This is important. It's really the point of it, folks.
Well, when you're working for yourself or for a small organization, there really aren't days off, but you also don't have overseers and overlords. So that's
This is true.
it's kind of
And I
kind of
can work from home if I want, or I can go to the office if I want,
right. Or home is the office. So that's anyway.
in some
So
cases,
so
yes.
if we take a look at the calendar, while we are chatting, we are 2 days or away from the CEDIA and CI Commercial Integrator Expo, CIX, they
Mhm.
call it, where I'm running a UC track of 12 sessions. I've talked about that ad infinitum on this show. I don't need to go through it again, other than the fact that I'm highlighting the fact that one of the ones that I'm moderating with my friend David Maldo is going to be about how to select the right gear for your application and what to pick and what you should choose and how you should look at and be subjected to company details that they give you and what's true and what's
Yeah,
lies,
yeah. I
what's
saw
good and
your
what's
post
bad.
about
And
that on LinkedIn, and I'm kind of excited about that because
yeah,
that's and listen, it's not just UC equipment, but it's audio equipment and straight up video equipment. You've got to learn how to interpret spec sheets. Everybody, when I first started in the industry, I thought spec sheets were kind of, the Bible. They were the truth. There was some sort of standard that spec sheets had to be written to. And then you discover that it's a little fungible and you got to learn to decipher them. So that's the panel that I'm looking forward to the most. I certainly
yeah.
hope
And
it's
the
recorded
thing
and
about
broadcast later.
what we're going to go into there, which I think is actually interesting, if you're buying a box, buy a box. If it doesn't work, you learn something. You buy a different box next time, whatever. If you're buying 1,000 or 500 or 10,000 or something like that, do some homework. Don't just go with whatever the integrator or the consultant or whatever is telling you. Go on Reddit. See what these companies'
Yep.
customers are saying about them. Go on LinkedIn. See if they're hiring people or if they're letting people go, and see if the people they're letting go are really good people, the people
Well,
you want in a company, or like understand what's going on with the organization, because all the information's out there and it's public, to avoid buying from a company that's going to cause you a disaster in the long run.
no, and even if you're not buying 1,000, so you're buying five because you're going to integrate them into five existing meeting rooms with some new gear and some existing gear. There's a little bit of information on the spec sheet that if it's misleading, incomplete, or just not there, it could be a real problem. There was an integrator in Texas a few years ago who spec'd a bunch of cameras for a bunch of meeting rooms. We're talking healthy double-digit meeting rooms. Couldn't get them to work no matter what. According to what the spec sheet said for all the products involved, it should have worked. And it took Paul Zealy about a day to figure out that there was a USB firmware incompatibility with the version of Microsoft they were running. That's pretty deep stuff. It shouldn't happen very often, but it can. And sometimes going through those spec sheets, or even better, we have a client right now coming up on the integration side of our business that we're trying to do something that hasn't been done before, and there's not a piece of gear that's specifically made for exactly what they want. So we're going to take one of their 12 spaces and it's going to become the lab, and we're going to try some different things, finalize the design in the real world, and then we'll deploy whatever the final solution is to all 12 rooms.
Yeah, no, the research should be done. You shouldn't just offload the ability to a third party for giving you advice, because you never know what they're, maybe they've got some sort of deal where they're if they have a spiff, if they put in a certain number of a type of equipment, that they get some money back. So you always want to do that research yourself. And if you hit a problem that's not been discovered before, okay, that happens. That's the business we're in. But if you hit a problem and then after you hit that problem, you do some research and you see people have been dealing with it for months, and dozens have had to be returned, then shame on you. That's research that needs to be done. So that's kind of the crux of where Dave and I are going to go with that
No, and
presentation.
that's good because, I used to think too that, years ago, most manufacturers were kind of solid team players, and was having a heck of a time with a remote installation. So, we're based in Vegas. This client is based in Vegas, but they had a satellite operation in Salt Lake, and we kept having an ongoing issue and ended up losing the client over it. They ripped out all the gear we put in, hired somebody else to put in the same system, but with different gear. And it turns out, I find out about 18 months later, the manufacturer knew exactly what the problem was, but it was a deficit with their product and they weren't going to admit it because there was no way to fix it. But yeah, so I am excited for that panel and for you and David to name names and shame people online.
Maybe we'll do that.
Yeah,
But the one caution I'll give you is that if you
I,
look on LinkedIn and you see the people that are being let go from the firm and they're better than the people that are at the firm, that should be one of your first warnings.
yeah,
Uh,
that is an indicator, and particularly if you see a lot of senior level people going, that always concerns me a little bit. And I
exactly.
get it. Cash comes, cash goes, regardless of the size of your business. Cash flow determines a lot of things. And sometimes when a company's a little tight, they're going to go to the people that cost them the most and say, hey, you've been here 22 years. How about we call it a day and then move you into some sort of consulting agreement or something? I get those sort of things happen. But when you start seeing, dozens upon dozens of people leaving, companies completely changing how a division operates or what a division's goals are.
Profitable companies. We're not talking about companies that are struggling. We're talking about companies that are making money
Yes,
in the millions or billions. And
right. That have strong, share dividends. Their stock is good, all that jazz. And all of a sudden, they just decide no, or people that they just hired to a senior position 6 months ago are already leaving. That's when you start wondering, hey, what's going on there? And heaven help us, hopefully, they're not deciding to put everything into AI.
we'll see. It's an interesting phenomenon that we're approaching right now, where a lot of companies, there's another big gap between how management sees the world and how employees see the world. A lot of data that CNN just released and Forbes just released and a few others around how most 92% of CEOs see that AI is the future, and 77% of employees say it's giving them more work, less productivity, harder to use. So it'll be an interesting shakeout. But anyway, getting back to the calendar, the next date after that is the first week of October. The first week of October has a couple of conferences in New York, NAB New York, AES New York, and those are happening at the same time as the one you're putting on, right? Kavlo in Seattle. How's that going?
Yep. Yeah, Seattle's looking strong. We're going there for our first time. And that's always the first time we go to any market. Um, it is always I don't want to say the hardest, but it's the one that requires the most effort because we've got no momentum. We've got zero name recognition. Maybe we have a little bit of name recognition just, throughout the Twitterverse or via LinkedIn. They've heard of us and stuff, but we've never been there, so don't really know what to expect. They've never actually felt the vibe. They really wonder, is there really free snacks? And is he really giving away $1,500 if you can figure out what Kavlo stands for? All that jazz. So the first one's always kind of the most amount of work. Obviously, it's the first time we'll be at the venue, so that's more work because they don't know us, we don't know them. There's a lot of learning there. First time we'll be at the hotel. All the first times, create more effort. But solid show, looking good. Registration opened last week. Already going well. We should have a pretty good announcement about an additional speaker, somebody that we're looking to add in the next couple of days from a major software company based in Washington.
I
Uh,
couldn't imagine who you're talking about in terms of a major
uh,
software company in Washington, but
yeah, and then we might, knock on wood, also have another speaker to announce next week from a major shoe manufacturer in Oregon. So it's looking good. I think, again, for folks that don't know about Kavlo, it's a regional trade show for the Pro AVL and UC markets that I created back in 2020. We're not trying to replace Infocom. I have no desire to be that big or that convoluted. We're never going to be Infocom or NAB or CES or any of those. We are a regional show. Our goal is to deliver much better quality than the average trade show. We're not too concerned about quantity. So that's looking very strong right now. We have folks from integration firms, from production firms, consulting firms have already registered. So that's kind of our goal. And that's happening October 10th in Linwood, Washington, which is just north of Seattle. Beautiful downtown Linwood, as they say in Linwood.
awesome. Sounds like you're going to have a great showing there, and I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you,
As
sir.
I look on the calendar after that, there's actually nothing that, I mean, I've got a whole bunch of other things that I'm doing for specific manufacturers who, they're doing their own individual shows and, some of the software providers, some of the stuff, but I'm talking about the big ones that everybody can go to. The next one on my calendar is LDI DSE, which is 8th, 9th, and 10th in December. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I'd say
in
you got to
Vegas.
give an honorable mention to CFX, which is the Technology for Houses of Worship trade show. That's happening in October. But again, that's kind of a niche market, or a very, maybe not niche, but a very specific market. You also have out of home, the out of home network, New York
Right.
City. That's happening in October. But I think, yeah, the next big one that you might see a lot of the AV tweeps, as they are called, attending would be that Digital Signage Expo / LDI / X Live happening in December at the very same time as NFR, I might add. So hopefully people have
Yeah,
already
it's
made.
a sad thing for me. I attended LDI like every other year for my entire career, and I can remember the whole convention center, all the smoke and all the smoke detectors had to be off, and the clouds and the foam and lasers and all the rest of it that were over there, the bubble machines. And I was there last year. You were there. We were there together, actually.
Yep.
I ran into you there, and it was like I finished it in 5 minutes. Um, and, and I
It's not
and
that small.
and I finished the DSE part of it in 1 minute. Um, and to be doing it during what is one of the largest conferences in Vegas, NFR, means that I don't think the folks at the LVCVA are really giving it a lot of credence in terms of being a big or a valuable show.
No, and
I feel
listen,
bad
listen.
about that.
QuestX got the short end of the stick. That there's no doubt about that. But NFR is the third largest recurring event for Las Vegas.
Which is the rodeo show, the
It's
National
the yeah,
Retail.
NFR, National Finals Rodeo. It's basically the Super Bowl of rodeo. It's when all the biggest belt buckles will be given away. Um, and it's a 10-day event. It always starts the first Wednesday of December and ends the second Saturday of December. And it packs the town. It generally sells the town out by itself. So now, unfortunately, QuestX, because of F1, and at the end of the day, we know in Vegas, if there's anything that's true in Vegas, money talks and everybody else walks. So when F1 generates $1.4 billion in economic injection into the economy, they're going to take the slot that used to be held by LDI and uh, signage, which unfortunately bumps them into December, which is not as busy a travel time for business folks. A lot of folks are already thinking about the holidays, or
Mhm.
depending on their faith, the holidays may have already begun. High holidays. Um, and then of course they're competing with NFR as well and Cowboy Christmas. But listen, if nothing else, here's what I'm looking forward to. The convention center is going to be a super interesting mingle of the digital signage folks in their suits and very professional wear, and then all the kind of rock and roll and theater people from LDI, and then all the cowboys and cowgirls who are attending the Cowboy Christmas, which is the NFR's gift shop, and where a lot of folks do their holiday shopping. It's 300,000 square feet of gift shop, by the way. It is huge. But all those things will be at the convention center at the same time. So the mingling of the people will be that the people watching will be fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still thinking I'm going to be there. I'm on the fence with it, but I'm definitely still thinking I'm going to be there. So if that happens, we'll do that. I will definitely be there a month later for CES
For
2025.
CES, of course.
And
You haven't missed a
CES,
CES in 3 centuries.
yeah, CES just unveiled a new logo today, and with all the hype that they were providing it over the last month, I was expecting to see flowers and fireworks and other things shooting out of it or something. And I'll play the video for you, the reveal video for everybody here. But a little underwhelmed. You guys take a look. So yeah, okay, they refreshed the logo. I don't know that I'm gonna really
Yeah.
get rid of the old logos behind me too quickly, or we'll see. But I guess it's
Well, and
good for
listen,
them to always stay current.
I'm not a marketing pro, but I always like it when the logo is the name, is the brand. I like it. It's kind of all in one. And I'm to their credit, you're not going to see, I don't know what you would call it, but that graphic, that circle bar thing, I'm sure you're not going to see that by itself anywhere because it would never convey to the average person that that's CES, right? The logo, I would imagine, is the whole thing, the graphic plus the three letters. But hey, listen, it's their association.
Yeah. So it's always the largest show in Las Vegas every year, and it's one of the largest shows in North America. I think it's the largest show in North America,
I
conference.
believe so, yes.
Um, but between the
It
various
is the number one in
communities,
Vegas.
and I'm obviously, I always go there, and you and I argue about this sometimes and discuss it, but CES for me is an 18-month look ahead as to what technology is going to be coming down the pike. We saw attending CES, we saw when video recorders were going to be something that were available.
Okay, that's one.
We saw when film cameras were going to give way to digital cameras, which has been a tremendous change in the industry, and that it's digital sensors
I would
and
argue that broadcast pushed that first, and then it filtered down to consumer, and then it came over to kind of bread and butter commercial AV. But
yeah, but it's an interesting thing as a
I'll
regular
give it to you. That's
as
two.
a regular attendee to that show, when things come out on the market in stores that somebody said, "Oh, look, did you see they had one of those?" To me, it's like, "Oh yeah, I saw that about a year and a half ago." It's interesting to see it's in stores now. Mind you, that I've talked about this for forever. There's no longer a check and balance on consumer products. There used to be,
Correct.
if you wanted to build something, you would have to go to a bank or a financer and say, "Hey, I want to build this thing," and they would have to say, "Really? I don't know if that's going to work." So there would always be this check. Now, with Indiegogo and a bunch of other similar sites, you can conceive of a product, build a prototype, and sell it directly to people. So
Sure.
there's no longer
Sure.
a check. There's really stupid products coming out
Listen,
right.
I can go out right now and buy a pretty good CNC machine. For 5 to 10 grand. I can go out and buy a really good 3D printer for 10 to 20 grand. I can pay a CAD person to develop some drawings for me for a grand. For 50 grand, I can be a manufacturer and actually be putting out a fairly polished, fairly finished product that ships, right? And certainly if you outsource it, it's even less, aside from the fact that you got to travel to China or Indonesia or
Right.
Vietnam a couple of times to make it happen. Or in these days, maybe Mexico. Mexico's really coming up as a manufacturing partner for a lot of companies. Um, so yeah, you don't have that vetting anymore, and anything can hit the market, and sometimes it shouldn't. I will say that there is on the commercial AV side, whether it's CES, whether it shows up at CES or not, obviously, there's always a fair bit of when I go into a space and I'm dealing with the actual end user, not the technology manager or the IT, head of IT or head of AV, but the actual person that's going to be in the room. I often get well, at home, I can just do blah, 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 and it happens automatically. I can just tell Alexa, or I can just talk into my remote, or so we do have to, there is that kind of consumer hangover that comes over to the commercial side where they expect things to be as simple and as easy as they are at home, not realizing that in some cases, simple and easy at home is because it's at home, not because it's in a commercial environment. There's more things to consider. But then also, in the early days, you had this same challenge where executives were saying, why can't we just have Alexa in the boardroom? And then you have to explain to them that that means the microphone is always on. And, so yes, consumer definitely has an influence on commercial, no doubt about it.
It's turned into one of the most important conferences for me. And what I'm hoping to see this year, I've been honored to be one of their Innovation Award judges for a number of times in the past, usually in the display category. And I'm hoping that some of the displays are going to be DV LED based. Because I really see us at an inflection point right now with micro LED and some other capabilities and flip chip and some other things that are going on. I
Yeah,
think we're starting to see the death of the LCD in the next few years.
I think so too. And I was going to say a moment ago, I'll let you die on the hill of how important CES is, just like I'll let Tim Albright die on the hill of Resimercial is a trending thing, um, or prosumer, whichever one you want to call it. But I will say this, and Tim had, I bring up Tim because he had mentioned that he really wants to see what's going on in DVLED when he attends the show this weekend.
this week. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think you're right. I mean, we look at now, it is not uncommon at all. Pretty much, I won't say every manufacturer, but every name manufacturer, kind of, an a B plus or better DVLED manufacturer has a point 0.9 pitch product. It wasn't that long ago that the best you could do uh, with LCD was kind of the equivalent to about a point 0.7. So for the average person with the average eyesight sitting in the average living room, zero point 0.9 versus zero point 0.7 is nothing. It is completely unseeable, right? So now if you start talking about those packages, right? And a few years ago, the trend came out where everybody created a 130 to 136 all in one package. You can get it with the wall mount, or you can get it with the cart or the trolley, depending on how they write their English. And it was an all-in-one. Came with the processor, screen, boom, 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 tile-based. You can just pull a module out if you have a problem, whatever. I think the next trend there is going to be to try and get it down to that hundred-ish and be price competitive, because hundred-ish is about the biggest you see right now in LCD. You see the Panasonic 98. Hisense has a beautiful 100 that's priced very aggressively and selling very, very well right now in the commercial space. 24/7 rated, 50,000 hours, 4K, all the bells and whistles. So if the DVLED manufacturers can figure out how to get into that 100 range for around that same money, now that's a thing. The downside is for the average consumer, of course, installation is a little more finicky and a little less forgiving and a lot more labor, right? Because it's module after
Well,
module.
some of them are selling not that big, but some of them are selling direct replacements in the sizes of LCDs. So the next time
Oh,
your
interesting.
6-inch LCD burns out, you just go into the catalog, get the SKU, they sell it to you with the frame, even though it's modular, it's just one for one replacement. And you're going to see a lot more of that as these products burn out because they have a better total cost of ownership. So if
Totally. And you're generally speaking, again, speaking of kind of the B plus or better brands, your color management is going to be better. I would love for somebody like Naoti to come out with something in that hundred-ish size, 90 to 100, because that fits in my living room. And they just became the first Pantone certified uh,
not
video wall.
certified,
Yeah.
um, Pantone validated. It's very,
Oh,
they want
it's
to make sure you get the
validated.
right word. It's
Okay.
validated, it's not certified.
All right. But their colors are just
It's
beautiful.
beautiful. Yeah.
Just beautiful colors. And that's a thing for me. Like I have LCD in my living room. I have plasma in my bedroom because I still love first of all, because it hasn't died. It probably has
You want to
90.
talk about a hill to die on? Oh, geez,
Yeah.
plasma,
Well,
really?
it's got like 90,000 hours left on it, and I'll probably die before it does because I only use it 2, 3 hours a week, right? Air conditioned, no smoking, et cetera, all the stuff that makes it last. But I love the flesh tones. I love the warmth of the color. And that's where I think if somebody can combine that in that DVLED product and also get into that price point, man, that's a
Yeah.
winner. That's a
We'll
winner.
we'll we'll be there in the next few years, and the question is, when is it now? And it's coming up like each product by project, you got to reevaluate it. So interesting stuff. And then if we go back to the calendar, the last one we'll talk about is first week of February, right? February 4th through 7th is Integrated Systems Europe, ISE in Barcelona.
In this
I
time of
miss
year,
Amsterdam, but Barcelona's nice too. They don't hit you with squirt guns while you're in the street.
oh
And
yes, they do. Yes,
they
they
do
do.
now. That's but
Yeah, they
they
do
don't like the
now.
tourists anymore. Yeah.
And it's so funny. I'd be curious to know. I see those headlines now about all the people that across the world who are trying to have tourists leave. I just got to wonder what their economies would be like without the tourism money. Um, I've never been to ISC. Every year about this time of year, I start mulling over whether I should go or not. Particularly, that's my heritage. If you go back several generations in my family, we're from Spain on my mother's side. But then, whatever. Life gets busy.
Yeah, well, no, it's definitely a worthwhile show, and in many people's eyes, it has surpassed the shows that we go to here in the U.S. in some cases. So, um, it's it's where the calendar stops at that point. Now, there are, like we mentioned, if I didn't mention your conference or I didn't mention your thing, there are plenty of them between all those dates that we haven't brought up. There's again, I'm going to be at WebEx 1 at the end of October, and I'm sure Microsoft is doing some things, and there are other, a lot of smaller individual pieces, some events going on specifically for analysts that I'll be attending. But those are the big ones. That's where you'll be running into folks like
Yeah, those are the main ones. I also keep an eye on those kind of more regional events or even local events. So you have, in the trade show world, you have all these different scale of events, right? You have the big national shows like CES and ISC and Infocom, NAB, digital signage, LDI. Those are big national shows. You could even say they're international shows, but they're really that's the scale. Um, then you kind of go down to regional shows, which would include distributor shows like the Almo E4 experience is a bit of a regional show. They'll draw from a couple hundred miles away, typically. Cablo is a regional show. That's what we gear it to be. You also have your rep shows. Locally, you get your rep firms that bring out their manufacturers, and maybe two or three rep firms work together. I find those shows interesting because having been a rep myself, and I've hosted that kind of show. I think the first one ever in Vegas that I'm aware of back in 2010 when I worked for a new CT. We had all our manufacturers come out. The rep shows are interesting because theoretically, you're most likely only going to run into the people that you already knew about because the rep firm is going to invite the people they know, right? Most of those rep shows don't have like a lot of marketing to get outside their own network, but it's still good to connect, right? And keep your brand in front of the people who already love it. Maybe you sway a couple of people. Maybe you've got the product that's available and the
Sure.
one that the integrator that's or the production person likes to use isn't available. So you flip someone, those are good things. And then there's this new trend too, newish, where integrators are banding together to create an end user experience. The AVX show in Colorado, that's been around for quite a few years and does pretty well. They're moving this year, so I'll be curious to see how that turns out for them because they're moving to downtown. There was one just in Utah a few weeks ago. So I'm curious, you'll see that. And of course, all the big firms, Diversified and ADI Systems and Ford, they all have their own shows too. So there's never any shortage of shows available. I mean, in November, I've got 13 shows listed that I know about that have some sort of pro AV lighting or UC component to them, if not being actually focused on that. So you point out, yeah, the big shows are great to go to. You're going to see lots of people, but those smaller shows, you usually can make a better connection because you're going to have a little more time to chat with someone. You're going to be able to have a better conversation because it's not so much hustle and bustle and hurry and the next guy and I'm waiting and it's not as loud. So it's for us, and that's part of what we love about Cablo. It's quality over quantity. We're not trying to be the biggest show. We're not trying to have 1,000 people walk through in one day. We're really looking to have 150 to 250 qualified, serious pro AV lighting and UC folks walk through. Folks that, we would want to meet, work with, work for, like that.
So, Mike, how can people reach out to you or find out more about the Cablo show in Seattle?
Well, the easiest way to find out about the Cablo show is to either follow us. We're on all the socials, Cablo_tech. You can go to the website, cablo.tech. And if you want to send me a direct message, Mike, Mike, at cablo.tech. That's CAVLO.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for
Thanks
staying
for
with
having
us
me.
here during the Labor Day weekend. Well, we appreciate it. We will see you on next week's show.